In a world of constant noise, where social media breeds endless comparison, where expectations are inflated beyond reason, and toxic relationships quietly erode the mind, letting go feels like the hardest thing to do, yet it is the most necessary. We are not short on time. Our minds are simply cluttered with things unworthy of our attention. And then we wonder why we feel drained, lost, and distant from ourselves. To live a life of peace and resilience is not to add more, but to subtract with quiet intent and unwavering clarity. Today, we'll face 11 silent weights pulling us down and learn to release them, not for anyone else, but for the peace, strength, and freedom that dwell within. 1. The habit of explaining yourself to those who don't deserve it. On the path of personal growth and inner stillness, one often overlooked discipline is giving up the habit of explaining yourself to those who haven't earned that right. It's a common psychological urge, the need to be seen accurately, to be understood, especially in moments of conflict, confusion, or pain. Yet not everyone has the care, goodwill, or capacity to truly understand. And the more we try to explain in such moments, the deeper we fall into prolonged hurt and unnecessary exhaustion. When someone has wounded you, twisted your words, or manipulated your emotions, explaining yourself only prolongs an emotional tether that's already toxic. They may not be listening, or if they are, it's only to defend their ego or invalidate yours. In such cases, explaining doesn't bring clarity. It reopens the same wound in your mind. Having to constantly prove your worth, your intentions, or your innocence to someone who doesn't care is draining. It leaves you disoriented and slowly erodes your trust in yourself. From a Stoic perspective, this runs counter to a foundational principle. Focus on what you can control. You cannot command the thoughts, emotions, or opinions of others, but you can govern your response and choose your actions. A Stoic does not plead their case in futile conversations. They understand that inner peace is far more valuable than validation from someone unwilling to listen with sincerity. Moreover, the habit of over-explaining breeds a subtle dependency. Your self-worth becomes tethered to someone else's feedback. The more you crave to be understood, the more vulnerable you become to negative judgments. This slowly strips away your independence of thought and feeling. Eventually, you find yourself bending your behavior to please others instead of living by your own principles and values. Rather than continuing to explain in vain, choosing silence or stepping away from toxic dialogue is an act of maturity and self-mastery. In this context, silence isn't avoidance. It's a conscious decision to protect your boundaries and preserve your inner stillness. When you no longer seek approval from those who don't deserve a say, you begin to taste the freedom, a freedom born from sovereignty over your own mind, not the fleeting agreement of others. 2. Outdated goals. On the path to maturity, each of us has set goals, believing they would lead to success, happiness, or recognition. By nature, goals serve as our compass. They give us direction, fuel our efforts, and help us push through adversity. Yet there's a truth few are willing to admit. Not all goals remain relevant forever. Some that once inspired us, that once seemed like worthy dreams, gradually become obsolete as we evolve, as our circumstances shift, and as our values mature. And the danger lies in continuing to chase them, not because they still serve us, but because they feel familiar, or because we fear the discomfort of letting go. Loyalty to an outdated goal often disguises itself as perseverance. We fear that walking away might make us look like quitters. We fear judgment, or that all the time and energy we've poured in would be wasted. But in truth, Nothing is more wasteful than continuing to invest in something that no longer reflects who we are. A worthy goal must align with who we are now, not with some outdated version of ourselves. Without review, realignment, and timely release, goals become burdens. They drain us, disconnect us from ourselves, and steer us off course without our awareness. From a Stoic lens, clinging to what lies outside our control is a form of suffering. Goals, if they no longer serve us, must be reassessed with reason and objectivity. For Stoicism does not worship outcomes at all costs. It values right action. A Stoic won't hesitate to redirect their path when it no longer reflects their core values. They know that change is not failure, but evidence of deep understanding and the courage to live with integrity. In today's world, where we're constantly urged to achieve something big, the pressure to succeed can drive us to chase goals that are no longer our own. This becomes even more dangerous when those goals are tied to status, social expectations, or a sense of safety. That's why regularly asking ourselves, is what I'm pursuing still truly meaningful to me, becomes a vital life skill. It saves time and energy, and more importantly, it keeps our journey honest, adaptive, and grounded. To accept that a goal has outlived its purpose is not to give up. It simply marks a shift, a step toward a path that better suits who we are now. And sometimes, the bravest and wisest thing we can do in this life is to stop at just the right moment. 3. Seeking external validation. One of the most subtle dependencies of modern life is our attachment to how others see us, to their recognition, approval, and praise. We grow up in environments where achievement is celebrated, appearance is admired, and success is broadcast to the world, making our self-worth feel increasingly tied to likes, compliments, and public agreement. Over time, being true to ourselves no longer feels like a priority. Instead, many live to be accepted, to fit in, to match some social blueprint of what is considered right or valuable. And in doing so, we drift further from ourselves, feeling hollow, even while being admired. The pursuit of validation can begin from a healthy place, a desire to connect, to share, to be seen as someone of worth. But once that need becomes the condition for feeling enough, it quietly turns into a psychological trap. We start altering our behavior, speech, careers, even our identity to meet others' expectations. Our actions no longer stem from purpose or principle, but from the fear of rejection, judgment, or being forgotten. This doesn't just wound our self-respect. It robs us of agency over our own lives. From a Stoic perspective, a person's value lies not in fleeting recognition, but in living with reason, virtue, and integrity. The Stoic doesn't reject social connection, but they refuse to let their emotions and actions be governed by others' expectations. They know that true freedom begins the moment we stop needing to be validated. And only then can we act freely, willingly, and from a place of genuine inner strength. Letting go of the need for validation doesn't mean becoming arrogant or indifferent to the world. It simply means realigning our focuses from outward to inward. Instead of asking, "What do they think of me?" the Stoic asks, "Am I living in accordance with the values I hold true?" When the answer is yes, both praise and criticism lose their grip. We no longer need someone's permission to feel whole, nor their admiration to affirm our existence. In the end, it's only when we stop trying to become someone we think others will love that we begin to truly become our safety selves. All that is steady must begin from within. Otherwise, no matter how much success or applause we receive, unease remains, because our foundation was built on the eyes of others, and those eyes are never still. 4. Impulsive reactions and outbursts of anger. Anger is one of the most powerful and primal emotional responses we possess. It erupts when we feel insulted, hurt, wronged, or unheard. In that moment, reason is often pushed aside, replaced by impulsive actions, reckless words, sharp glares, a rising voice, and sometimes decisions that leave lasting damage. The danger isn't in anger's presence. It's a natural neurological response to distress, but in allowing it to take control of our behavior and thinking, leading us to say what shouldn't be said, do what shouldn't be done, and sometimes destroy relationships or reputations we've spent years building. In truth, most interpersonal damage stems from those brief moments of uncontrolled rage. A harsh word, a rash gesture, a defiant stare. These can leave fractures that never heal. Many, after an outburst, find themselves living with regret, apologies, and self-reproach. But the harm caused is often irreversible. This shows clearly that uncontrolled anger is a silent, dangerous saboteur, capable of undermining our well-being, careers, and personal relationships. From a Stoic perspective, anger isn't just an emotion to manage. It is a test of maturity. A Stoic doesn't suppress emotions, nor do they deny anger's existence, but they train themselves to observe it without being swept away by it. They learn to pause, remain silent, and take a step back instead of reacting immediately. For they understand that true power lies not in winning arguments, but in not letting others dictate their emotional state. When we react in anger, we hand over the keys to our mind. But when we remain calm and choose to respond rather than react, we reclaim our inner sovereignty. In the modern world, fast-paced, high-pressure, and lacking in patience, anger management has become a vital life skill. It protects our mental health, preserves meaningful relationships, and keeps us aligned with our path even in the midst of emotional storms. Developing composure isn't achieved overnight, but each time we restrain an impulsive reaction, we lay another brick in the foundation of self-mastery and willpower. Anger can either be a wildfire or a quiet energy for transformation. The choice is ours, and when we learn to convert it into awareness, compassion, or constructive action, we rise above our impulses and radiate a strength that no outburst could ever match. 5. The habit of comparison. Comparison seems harmless at first glance, yet it quietly and persistently erodes our emotions and self-worth. It often begins with something simple. When we see someone who appears more successful, happier, more accomplished, or possessing something we long for, in that instant, the mind starts weighing itself and unconsciously concludes that we are not good enough, not fast enough, not attractive enough, not worthy enough. The more we look outward, the more we feel a void within. And if that sense of lack goes unrecognized, it slowly forms a spiral of negativity, pulling us into anxiety, envy, or insecurity without us even knowing why one resides in. This habit has become so widespread is that modern society encourages it at every level. Achievements are made public, lifestyles are displayed, joy is selectively shared, while pain and struggle are hidden. This creates an environment where everyone tries to showcase their best version, and others look at it as a standard by which to judge themselves. As a result, instead of focusing on their own journey, many lose touch with their inner values, constantly chasing the pace and standards of others. They no longer move to their own rhythm, but rush to keep up with someone they may not even truly know. From a Stoic viewpoint, comparison is a distraction from what matters most, ourselves. The Stoic practitioner understands that each person has their own circumstances, starting point, temperament, and fate. To weigh two lives on the same scale is both meaningless and irrational. They do not see others' success as a threat to their own worth because they don't tie happiness to relative standing, but to living in alignment with reason, virtue, and personal integrity. When the mind is no longer pulled by comparison, we gain more energy to notice our real progress, to appreciate what we have, and to act with calm purpose instead of being driven by inadequacy. What must be clearly understood is that comparison not only harms the one who does it, it distorts their entire sense of self-worth. It leads us to overlook small victories, disregard simple yet meaningful moments, and feel perpetually insufficient no matter how much we've achieved. Over time, it weakens our trust in ourselves and makes us dependent on others' milestones as the measure of our own success. To break free from this habit, the first step isn't to look away, but to look inward. Identify what truly matters to you, what reflects your essence, and the values you want to live by. When you walk your own path, at your own pace, comparison begins to lose its grip, and then you will realize peace doesn't come from surpassing others, but from living in harmony with who you are, one day and one choice at a time. 6. Perfectionism. Perfectionism is one of the most subtle disguises of the fear of failure. It doesn't always appear as an obvious obsession. It often hides within seemingly positive desires to do better, be more thorough, stay in control, avoid all mistakes. At first, it can make us feel like we're progressing, being meticulous, or upholding high standards. But over time, those very standards become the greatest barriers to action, creativity, and simply living with ease in our human limitations. Because perfectionism doesn't allow for mistakes, doesn't tolerate learning through trial and error, and certainly doesn't give us permission to be our imperfect selves. Those who chase perfection often feel the pressure to always be right, always excel, always be recognized as better than others, or better than the version of themselves from yesterday. This creates an extreme internal expectation, where even the smallest mistake becomes a reason for self-blame, disappointment, or even giving up. Perfectionism refuses to accept that we are beings in the process of learning, and that real growth often comes from stumbling, adjusting, and trying again. It drives us to pursue an ideal destination that doesn't exist, all while neglecting the true value of the journey, of experience, and of each small step along the way. From a Stoic point of view, demanding perfection from ourselves is a form of attachment to what lies beyond our control. Stoicism encourages right action, but not the surrender of peace to outcomes, because outcomes depend on many external factors, while effort and attitude remain within our power. If we only feel content when things are perfect, we will live in constant anxiety, grow irritable with ourselves and others, and feel defeated even in moments of success. Perfectionism robs us of the ability to enjoy what we have, whispering constantly, "It's still not good enough." More dangerously, perfectionism paralyzes action. Many people delay because they don't feel ready, not skilled enough, not equipped with enough time or resources to do things flawlessly. They wait for the perfect moment to begin, a moment that rarely comes. Opportunities are missed, time slips away, and confidence fades, not from lack of talent, but from the unrealistic standards they impose on themselves. It's a quiet but draining loop, where each passing day becomes another reminder that they're still not enough, even when they've been trying their hardest. Breaking free from perfectionism doesn't mean giving up on growth. It means learning to grow with compassion for yourself. When we learn to set realistic expectations, accept imperfections, and keep moving forward, we begin to experience freedom in action, calm in the mind, and true joy in each slow, steady step. Because in all this life, what we need most isn't perfection. It's perseverance, honesty, and the courage to keep going. 7. Unconscious use of social media. In the digital age, social media has become an inseparable part of modern life, a space for connection, expression, entertainment, and self-presentation. Yet alongside its convenience lies a quiet but troubling reality. Many people are using social media unconsciously. They open their phones without intention, scroll through hundreds of fragments each day, absorbing waves of images, emotions, opinions, and comparisons without realizing the impact this flood has on their minds. Seemingly harmless gestures like swiping, liking, reading comments, or watching stories can, without awareness, turn into automatic habits that scatter our focus, stir negative emotions, and erode our ability to concentrate. Unconscious use of social media rarely stems from genuine need. It more often arises from emptiness, boredom, or vague anxiety. Instead of facing our inner state, we open apps reflexively to fill the void, to escape real thought, to chase fleeting dopamine from a heart reaction or a quick laugh. But the more we consume mindlessly, the more we lose control of our own mental stream. Time passes unnoticed. We don't know how long we've been there, what we've seen, whose emotions we've absorbed, or what state those emotions have left us in. The result is that many feel more drained, more scattered, more directionless after scrolling, not less. Social media is not the enemy, but using it without clear intention makes our minds vulnerable to forces beyond our control. Stoic practice emphasizes mastery over attention and response. When we let the stream of others' news, images, and emotions flow into our minds unfiltered, we are surrendering the quality of our inner world to the noise of the outer one. And when this becomes habitual, we begin to lose clarity, the very foundation of a life lived with purpose and peace. Social media also creates a distorted layer of reality where life is curated, edited, and optimized for display. Continuous exposure to ideal bodies, luxurious travels, grand successes, and picture-perfect happiness leads many to insecurity, comparison, or a dulling of their own lived experience. The danger is that this erosion doesn't happen all at once. It builds, bit by bit, every day, until we no longer feel joy in our actual lives. The solution isn't to abandon social media altogether, but to learn how to use it consciously. Each time you open an app, ask, why am I here? Is this content nourishing my mind or making it more chaotic? If there's no clear reason, the wisest choice might be to close it and return to the real world, where there are still countless things truly worth living for, feeling deeply, and connecting with in the most honest and complete way. 8. Resentment and holding grudges. Resentment is one of the heaviest emotions a person can carry for years. It often stems from real wounds, acts of injustice, cruel words, or betrayal by someone once trusted. In the moment of being hurt, anger and the desire for someone to pay are entirely natural. However, when those feelings are left unprocessed and persist over time as a quiet grudge, they are no longer a defense mechanism. They become a silent burden that erodes us from within. The paradox is this: the one who caused the harm may have moved on, while the one holding the resentment remains stuck in the past, reliving the same wound in their mind each day. Harboring hatred doesn't change others, nor does it bring justice. It only keeps our mind trapped in what already happened and can't be undone. When someone constantly replays old events, the words unsaid, the actions not taken, the person who wronged them, they are surrendering the present and poisoning the future. Resentment can turn us bitter, distrustful, and closed off, leading to irrational behavior and decisions driven by emotion, not reason. And the longer it lingers, the deeper it roots into our perception, forming biases that make it harder to open up, to trust, and to find true inner peace. A Stoic knows they cannot change another's actions or rewrite the past, but they can fully choose their response in the present. Forgiveness, in this light, is not denial of the pain or dismissal of the wrong. It is the intentional act of ending its power over our present and future. Forgiveness is not necessarily because they deserve it, but because we deserve freedom from the weight of negative emotion. In forgiving, we cut the emotional cord that ties us to the person who harmed us. We reject the idea that this wound will continue to define our thoughts, reactions, or identity. Grudge holding is sometimes mistaken as strength, as if remembering every wrong proves resilience. But in truth, it's a form of emotional dependency that endures. Strength isn't in remembering who hurt you. It's in rising above it, learning from it, and living well in spite of it. Letting go of resentment doesn't make you weak or naive. It reveals maturity, a state where emotions no longer dictate behavior, and the mind is grounded enough to choose peace over a hollow victory. 9. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting for the perfect moment is one of the most common illusions we create to postpone action. It often takes the form of thoughts like, when I'm more ready, when I have enough time, when things settle down, or when the conditions are better. These justifications sound reasonable. After all, we all want to begin something important under the best possible circumstances. However, the problem is that the perfect moment we imagine rarely, if ever, arrives. There is always something missing. Some worry, some voicey fear, some less than ideal situation that keeps us stalling. The result is that we stay still while time passes. Opportunities slip by, and potential remains frozen in an endless waiting room. This waiting isn't usually a strategic pause. It's driven by fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not measuring up. It's the mind's way of masking insecurity by shifting the responsibility to circumstances. We don't act not because we don't want to, but because we think it's not the right time. Yet if we look closely, prolonged hesitation doesn't make us more ready. It only heightens our anxiety, our doubt, and our disconnection from the motivation we once had. And eventually, we realize that what needed to change wasn't the environment. It was our internal resolve. A Stoic does not wait for the right feeling or the perfect environment. They act because it is right to act, regardless of whether conditions are favorable. They understand that we cannot control the current of the outside world, but we can control our will to move forward. Waiting for the ideal setup is a subtle illusion of control, when in truth, every meaningful action must be taken amidst imperfection, because it is within that very imperfection that we learn resilience, adaptability, and strength. Delaying action also traps us in the myth of an ideal self. We envision a future version of ourselves, someone with more skill, more time, more drive, and we compare our current self to that imagined ideal. This comparison convinces us that who we are now isn't enough to begin, creating internal pressure and making action feel further out of reach. But the truth is, that ideal version will never appear unless we start from the imperfect version that exists right now. Every action, no matter how small or flawed, is still a real step forward. And waiting endlessly, no matter how well-reasoned it sounds, is still a form of self-denial. Perfection is a moving illusion. It retreats every time we step closer. If we wait for a moment, free of mistakes, risks, or doubts, we may never begin at all. The real journey begins when we choose to move forward precisely in the state of not feeling ready, because it's through action in imperfect conditions that we slowly grow stronger and more steadfast. 10. When the past no longer serves the present. The past is an inseparable part of human life. It holds memories, lessons, beautiful moments, as well as unhealed wounds. However, when the past no longer serves the present, it must be consciously reevaluated. Living in old memories, obsessing over mistakes, regretting what's gone, or being haunted by loss doesn't just drain the spirit. It blocks personal growth. People often cling to the past in an attempt to preserve identity or feel safe. But in truth, the more tightly we hold on to what has ended, the more we lose our footing in the present and miss the quiet chances for inner renewal that appear each day. Many live in a state of what if, circling around questions like, what if I hadn't done that? What if things had turned out differently? Or, what if I hadn't let them go? These thoughts offer nothing but prolonged failure and endless self-blame. They blur the line between a lesson and a burden. A mistake from the past only holds value if it's transformed into wisdom that informs better action now. But if that mistake becomes the reason we stop trusting ourselves, it ceases to be a lesson. It becomes a mental shackle we've locked ourselves in. From the Stoic perspective, the past lies outside our control. No one can change what has happened, nor can we turn time backward to live it differently. The only thing we can do is choose how we respond to it now. A Stoic doesn't try to erase the past, but they don't allow it to block present action. They honor what has been, learn from it, and release emotions that no longer serve. This is a conscious act, not denial, but liberation. Like a climber who knows when to drop unneeded weight to keep ascending, those who understand the limits of the past refuse to let it become the burden that holds them back. One common mistake is to tie our present identity to what once happened. Someone who once failed in business may forever see themselves as a loser. Someone who was rejected in love may carry the fear of abandonment into every future relationship. Old stories, if replayed often enough, become self-fulfilling prophecies, causing us to unconsciously recreate the very patterns we wish to escape. Letting go of the past doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let it dictate our emotions, beliefs, or present-day choices. When we understand that the only moment that truly exists is now, we begin to see the value of awareness. Only in the present can we repair, create, love, forgive, and begin again. The past doesn't need to be erased, but it must be placed where it belongs, behind us, as part of the journey, not a permanent residence. When we stop looking back with eyes full of regret and start looking ahead with clear vision, that's when life truly begins. 11. Speaking ill of others. Speaking ill of others may seem harmless, but it reveals much about the inner state of the one who does it. It can be disguised as confiding, honest sharing, or just an opinion, yet its true nature remains the same. Using words to harm someone's dignity, image, or reputation, whether directly or indirectly. In many cases, this habit stems from insecurity, envy, or simply a desire to connect quickly by tearing someone else down to elevate one's own worth. People often feel more important, more interesting, or more worthy of attention when they have something to say about others, especially if it's negative or controversial. The issue lies not only in what is said, but in how it shapes the speaker's perception, ethics, and inner peace. When someone constantly highlights others' flaws, failures, or weaknesses, their mind becomes conditioned to view life pours judgment and negativity. They lose the ability to see the good, to empathize, and most importantly, to preserve clarity of thought. No one can keep a clean soul while their words continually spread harm. And though toxic speech spreads fast, it often leaves deep wounds, both in the person targeted and in the one speaking. Stoic philosophy views gossip as unnecessary and counterproductive to inner discipline. The Stoic turns attention inward toward their own thoughts, states, and attitudes, instead of wasting energy on what lies outside their control, such as others' behavior or lives. They understand that every word is a choice, every judgment a reflection of the inner self. And when speech is used to wound, the speaker themselves disrupts their own tranquility. To remain silent in the face of negativity is not weakness, but self-respect. Silence in this context is not complicity with wrongdoing. It is a refusal to become a carrier of spiritual toxins, whether knowingly or not. Moreover, engaging in a gossip erodes trust. If we speak ill of someone behind their back, what assurance do others have that we won't do the same to them? Once trust is lost, it's hard to regain, and our environment becomes one of suspicion, insecurity, and dishonesty when gossip is normalized. On the other hand, when we choose words of kindness, reject the spread of negativity, and learn to speak well or remain silent, we help cultivate a space where people feel respected, heard, and safe. In a world where anyone can say anything with the tap of a button, preserving kindness in speech becomes a deliberate, courageous act. We may not control what others say about us, but we fully control what we choose to say about others. And sometimes the most powerful voice is disciplined silence. For a long stretch of my life and work, I carried the weight of constantly having to prove my self, always needing to be right, to be recognized, to never show any flaw. I set ambitious goals and pursued them relentlessly, even when deep down, I knew they no longer reflected who I truly was. I stayed silent through emotional wounds, yet quietly searched for empathy from people who were never truly listening. I grew irritable when things didn't go my way, compared myself to others on social media, and believed that only in perfection would I be worthy of acceptance. But the paradox was this: the more I tried to control everything, the more anxious and exhausted I became. It was only when I started to pause, observe my emotions, adjust my behavior, and slowly let go of the self-destructive habits within, that I realized I didn't need to win or prove anything to the outside world. I needed to be at peace with myself first. Letting go of what no longer serves your inner peace is not an impulsive act. It's an intentional journey that demands persistence and complete honesty with yourself. Since I began practicing this seriously, the noise in my mind is quieted. I now know what I need, what I must do, and why I choose to do it. In the end, if anything in this video touched a part of your inner truth, then maybe it's time to begin your own journey of letting go of what no longer serves you. Remember, you don't have to change everything in a single day. You only need to start with one thing, one action, one thought, one habit, so long as it's a step you take with real commitment to inner transformation. And if you are looking for a space to keep learning, cultivating self-mastery, discipline, and inner peace, I invite you to stay on this path with us. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so we can meet again in future videos where we'll continue exploring the depth of Stoic philosophy and how to live it in this chaotic modern world. Don't forget to leave a comment below to share what you're applying, or see simply your thoughts after watching. I'll see you in the next video.